It's Rassicus here, and after that direct, I really needed some time to collect myself.
Mammals! Mammals!
Wait,
What?
But now I'm back, and I've really stewed over what I witnessed here, and now I want to just share all the new info we got, and give my extensive thoughts. I had some really mixed feelings here, and although I initially had kind of a negative, knee-jerk reaction to some of the things here in terms of the story, and I still have some worries, I am absolutely still very excited for Splatoon 3, and I want to know how this goes. And I'm not even going to talk about the new turf war mechanics or customization, so don't be like, oh, you didn't notice the eyebrow scars are gone or whatever. Yes, I'm excited for all that stuff, and I did notice it, but how am I supposed to think about that when we have whatever this is? You know what though, I need to talk about some maps first. So this first place is called Eeltail Alley, and it's an old residential area in Splatsville. I was really happy to see that we are continuing to have turf wars in the city like in the previous two games, because in the first wave of Splatoon 3 information, we were given the info that all the Inklings are fighting out in the wilderness now, and that got me and some other people scared that what if it meant that all the stages were out in the wilderness, and what if that just got repetitive with the scenery? So that's a relief that that's definitely not going to be the case. I just love how lived in this city looks, and the direct also mentioned that the Splatlands have been inhabited for a long time, so of course the city didn't just spring up out of nowhere after Chaos vs. Order. It just got a boom in popularity because of the Inklings and Octolings moving there for clout, because that's just how they are. And the next new stage we see is actually Museum di Alfonsino from Splatoon 1, which is now hosting an Indigenous People and Modern Art exhibit. Okay, there was some job listing on Nintendo's website a while back that seemed to confirm that old stages would be returning in Splatoon 3, and this got me and some other people a little nervous because there's a couple ways that they could have gone about this. Either A, they reskin the old stages, like give it a similar layout, but make it have a new theme and location in the Splatlands, which is what I was hoping for. Or B, we would be returning to Inkopolis, which to me didn't really seem to make much sense considering that we were told the Splatlands were a new location located far away from Inkopolis. This seems like a prime opportunity to explore a totally new and different part of the Splatoon world, so surely we wouldn't be going back to Inkopolis, right? Ah, yeah, we are. I was pretty upset when I first saw this. Like, being able to go back to Inkopolis so easily after being told we're far from there made me feel like we've been kind of duped and makes the world feel smaller, and I'm worried about this possibly meaning that in future Splatoon games we will be permanently stuck near the vicinity of Inkopolis, rather than being able to actually turf in far-off, distant parts of the Splatoon world like what I was feeling led to believe. Also, they have cars and planes and trains, like the same kind of transportation that we do. What kind of transport network are they talking about here? What are they going to pull out of their ass? But now that I've thought about it, I'm more okay with this. For one thing, people will finally stop being like, oh my god, the Inkopolis Tower is flipped over, Team Chaos destroyed everything, and the Earth's entire climate changed in 2 years. Like I said before, I would bet money that Inkopolis is perfectly fine, and of course, I'm right. There it is, Inkopolis is fine. Team Chaos did not destroy everything. The other reason why I think, like, this is fine. In the very first game, and this is confirmed by the way, that while the Inklings super jump to most of the stages like Urchin Underpass and Blackbelly Skate Park, there's some stages like Mahimai Resort and Bluefin Depot that are actually further away from the city to the point where Inklings do have to travel by train to get there. Those stages are far, but not that far, and that's kind of the sense of distance I'm getting with the Splatlands in Inkopolis. And what's giving me that sense is this dialogue in Octo Canyon where Mari says, I'm not sure what city that is over there, and you look out in the distance and it looks like a city out in the desert. If that truly has been foreshadowing the Splatlands all along, that would actually be kind of cool. And there's also the fact that there's still a lot that needs to be touched on lore-wise in and around Inkopolis with Octo Canyon, Octo Valley, and the Samnid territory, so maybe we're not ready yet to truly abandon Inkopolis. And of course, from a developer standpoint, it is so much easier to just port old stage. I'm going on such a tangent here, but the one last thing I have to say about the maps, I genuinely do not want them to port back all of the Inkopolis locations into 3. Like, I do not care that we can access it, we don't need it back. Like, just the ones that were in the first game and not 2, or even some of the later Splatoon 2 maps, and that's it. I want more new maps in the vicinity of the Splatlands. And if all the maps get ported back on top of all the Splatlands maps, I'm worried that it would set up this expectation in the long run that all maps coming back is possible, and that's just not really feasible. Like, look what happened with the national decks in Pokemon. Okay, before I actually go into talking about the story mode, this song, banger. After watching this trailer, I thought, oh god, Mr. Grizz might be a bear at this point, my worst nightmare. At least we didn't get Salmonlings, one of the few popular fan ideas that I really don't want or think should be canon. Oh hey, new band, let's see what they look like. This actually scared me because of how much both of these characters looked like some Salmonling designs that I've seen. But this isn't me being in denial, I genuinely don't think these are Salmonlings. It'd be really stupid if we learned about the existence of something as major as Salmonlings through something as inconsequential as some band members. You have to remember here, Salmonids are not integrated into Inkling society as a whole, and their history with the Inklings is not the same as with the Octarians. Like, these two species have always been separate from each other. And from everything we know about Salmonids, I really don't think Salmonids with a humanoid form like this should even exist. You cannot change my mind on this, and this will probably be worth its own video another time. I'm begging the Squid Research Lab to please tell me what species all these guys are, but I have a feeling we might not learn that until we get some art book or concept art exhibition in the far future, because that's just how it is with the bands, unfortunately. It looks like the guy on the left is a pufferfish, the one in the front looks like a funny looking inkling. This is probably another odd case of an inkling with a non-human-like skin tone like Kagi from Wet Floor. And the one in the back, I'm pretty sure they're going to be some other kind of fish because their design bears some similarity to, like, Sumabushi from Wet Floor and Taka from High Tide Era. Even Taka has black marks under their eyes. Guys, we have so many other possibilities here other than Salmonlings for what species this could be. And I'm sorry, are those headless shrimp? What? Now, on to the actual story mode part of the trailer. Holy shit, I have too much to talk about. Where do I begin? Like me with the Splatoon lore fixation finally being presented with new Splatoon lore related info, of course I'm going to go insane over this. So our player character is a Splatsville youth who earns a living salvaging scrap with their small fry buddy while enjoying the thrill of turf war. I'm hoping we actually get to do this scrap salvaging thing, like maybe it's how we find our sunken scrolls or whatever this game decides to call it. Or I've also seen some people speculate it being a multiplayer thing. Some co-op game mode based around that could be fun, but I really don't expect every Splatsville youth to have a small fry with them, so this might be our player character's special backstory. Anyways, they are the new Agent 3, as the Agent 3 that we've known in Splatoon 1 and 2 has been promoted to Captain, while Captain Cuttlefish is now just Craig Cuttlefish as he is retired. We have two different outfits seemingly for each environment. Our new Hero Shot thing is based on ink cartridge and 3D printer filament. Even though we've only been shown new Agent 3 as an Inkling, I am 100% sure we're going to be able to play as an Octoling and it will be the same. I'm sure the main reason why we're only getting this Inkling focus is because Splatoon is the Squid Game and Inklings are more iconic, especially to those who aren't as familiar with the series. In this story mode, we are fighting Octarians that seem to have been possessed by this fuzzy ooze, a substance that looks like it's alive but isn't. Touching it makes one lose their sense of self, and for our player character makes them this helpless ball of fur. We have also learned that our small fry companion can attack Octarians and eat this fuzzy ooze, and it seems like it takes power eggs to charge up the small fry so it can actually eat all the ooze. I'm gonna guess that's like a clearing condition, like we need to collect this many eggs so we can clear the ink. I don't know. Okay, this is probably going to be seen as a weird thing to complain about, but it's rubbing me the wrong way that Nintendo of America is insisting on calling the small fry Little Buddy, almost like it's their name, which it is not. In Japanese, they're just referred to as a small fry, or a small fry companion. And companion feels pretty fitting, they are a traveling companion. And the Nintendo of Europe localization calls them a small fry buddy, which feels like a good middle ground. I hope the game makes it clear that the small fry is not a pet, and also explains why we have this salmonid companion, considering we're told in the past that salmonid are dangerous and cannot get along with the Inklings. I'm feeling confident the small fry companion is this special relationship that is something exclusive to us, the player. Like, we have to play as an Inkling or Octoling because those are the only established playable species we have. But also, it's really looking like we're going to be dealing with Grizzco, and it would feel really weird if Salmonids, who have been wronged the most by Grizzco, were not involved at all. So, as a plot thing, having a Salmonid ally with an Inkling or Octoling just works. But this doesn't necessarily mean all Salmonids are suddenly totally cool and wanting to join with Inkling society, especially after all the shit we did to them in Splatoon 2. The concept of all the Inklings having small fries with them after all that? In terms of what little established Salmonid info we have, it does not sit right with me at all. Anyways, the story mode is set in a mysterious place called Alterna. While the location of Alterna hasn't been established yet, I think this is a section of the Octarian domes, or more accurately, part of the domes that humans made and Octarians have inhabited. Like, we got the enemy Octarians, the floaty stuff, and even what looks like a transport kettle, and that would explain why the new Squidbeak Splatoon is here and involved. I also imagine this area is really not too far from the Splatlands, as I noticed the very desert-looking area where Craig Cuttlefish is, and I'm gonna call him Craig from now on, there's the fuzzy ooze off in the background. I predict that Craig is who we're going to meet first out in the Splatlands, and he's gonna rope us into this whole Squidbeak Splatoon thing, and then send us off to find Agents 1 and 2 and the Captain, since we're still wearing our desert clothes in the snowy area. And this looks like the introduction to Callie and Marie and the Captain, who has their own little pose here, and I definitely think the Captain will be customizable. Like, oh, we meet Craig first, and he's like, oh, this is the Captain, and what do they look like again? And we get a similar customization thing like we did in Octo Expansion. We've already seen the Captain with 2 different eye colors, there's no way we can't customize them. Also, they have scars on their tentacles, that's kinda edgy. Oh, and of course Callie and Marie's models have been updated, their mask looks closer to their official renders. Speaking of them, controversial opinion, I would genuinely like Splatoon to break away from the whole agent thing at some point, and do some stories completely separated from the new Squidbeak Splatoon. I thought that the Splatlands being this new and faraway location would be the prime opportunity to do just that, but my immediate reaction was I was disappointed this wouldn't be the case. Yes, I know these are popular characters and I'm sounding like a hater right now, but I worry if we do new Squidbeak Splatoon stuff in every core Splatoon story mode, it would get very repetitive and stale after a while. Or should I say, not fresh. And Splatoon's timeline is progressing in real time, and canonically, Inklings are not supposed to live as long as Craig Cuttlefish has. You see what I'm getting at here? Like, we can't keep doing this forever. Splatoon 6, Craig Cuttlefish found dead in Miami, and we can really only have so many agents. But these are my paranoid future concerns. Looking on the bright side, having all these established characters returns that maybe we won't be needing to focus on developing them so much compared to if it was an all-new cast. And I guess this is warranted this time since there really are still some plot threads that need to be tied up. We're possibly not actually that far from Inkopolis, and the story involves trouble with the Octarians. And aside from all this crazy new stuff presented, I have a lot of questions like what's going on in the Octarian domes now that Octolings are integrating more and more into Inkling society? What about the other Octarians? How does Octavio feel about this? Are we going to touch upon this, or is Octarian lore going to get ignored like it has been for the past 6 years? Speaking of Octavio, Yes, he's back, and I'm actually happy to see Octavio returning like this. Since we see him so long before release, and in the official artwork, he stands alongside our heroes. I have a feeling he's going to be working with us this time, rather than being rehashed as a villain again. Octavio is clearly not possessed by this fuzzy ooze, and the new Squidbeak Splatoon, ever since Octo expansion, as confirmed in a Famitsu interview, has been working to help Octarians in need. Putting my money on Octavio being the one in need of help this time, as his troops are being possessed by this fuzzy ooze, and he does not like that. And I seriously do not see a good reason why Octavio would be behind some insane mammal revival plot. Also guys, to be honest, I am kind of an Octavio defender. I might have to make a video about that someday. Of course he's no angel, but there are some very common misconceptions about him, and if you frame his actions in consideration with the way the Octarians, his kind, were treated following the Great Turf War, then the way he acts feels a lot more understandable. Basically, I think him being redeemed in some way is very much reasonable. And I would honestly love something like Octavio setting aside his differences to fight some greater evil alongside some Inklings. And I wonder if that would open up a gateway to a true Octarian Inkling alliance at some point, like how it was in the pre-Great Turf War days. Could you imagine how cool it would be to have the Octarian domes built up to their full potential without worrying about an energy shortage? Like a transport system running between the domes and surface, Octarians moving to the surface, other species moving into the domes, even friendly turf wars in the domes like the shifty stations but even more lively and aesthetically pleasing. Just having those two societies fully integrated sounds great. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here though. Considering how badly Octavio has sought revenge after all this time, I could also imagine him being set in his ways like, yeah, I'm sick of you Inklings still, I'm going to keep on doing my thing, just so there's an excuse for the devs to continue using the expendable Octarians as a default enemy in every Splatoon game ever. I'd rather not that happen, but I wouldn't be surprised. Okay, main thing here. Mammals. Mammals, 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 return of the mammalians, what does that mean? Well, I'm scared. Roaring sound, coarse brown fur, bears. I need to mention the thing at the end of the trailer that everyone and their mother has pointed out by now because it's important to literally everything. I have been strongly expecting Mr. Grizz to be the next major villain of Splatoon. It really feels like everything has been building up to that, and yeah, I think this confirms it. One of the other huge things in this trailer that everyone and their mother has pointed out is the countdown. Actual spoken English! The only other time we see any intelligible human language in Splatoon, not counting Splatfest teas or any developer oversights, is in the ruins of Arc Polaris. So ominous how this countdown gets stuck on, too. Is there something that failed to launch? What I hope this doesn't all mean is that there are literal bears that are coming from the moon or outer space or some shit and they're sentient somehow, like humans experimented on bears, of all things, for some stupid reason, even though those are animals that are dangerous to humans and not easy to work with. And then the bears ran Grizzco and they did this whole power egg operation to make money so they can revive mammals for some reason, and that's what Samus Hunter's leak is about. I will be frank here, Samus Hunter is actually not the most reliable leaker. It's been proven that a lot of her leaks are taken from more reliable sources or are just guesses, and she has been wrong in the past, most recently about supposed Splatoon 3 news in the E3 Direct, which of course we got nothing of the sort. And this leak that she's put out feels very much like a guess that seems possible with the baseline knowledge of Splatoon's story, but it's just so predictable and stupid. I'm not saying this is impossible, but it feels too straightforward, and this quote-unquote leak fails to address many things for me to find it believable. Also, just why would something as major as Splatoon's entire story just leak to her? It's very fishy. But the sensible part of this is like, yeah, we do know mammalian bears have been hinted at with all the paw prints in Arc Polaris and the active bear area signs. It's been a given that bears will have significance somehow. I just hope it's going to tie into the story in an unexpected way beyond, holy shit guys, the guy named Mr. Grizz is a bear. Oh my god, who expected that? I'm sounding like a broken record at this point. I'd rather it be someone who wasn't a bear trying to bring back bears or mammals for some reason. I'll be touching on some of my other Mr. Grizz ideas throughout this video, but moving on for now. I'm sorry I've been so annoying about this, especially as of late, but I have been saying for years there are no mammals in Splatoon except for the Judds, and that includes marine mammals. And so many people have doubted me on this, been confused, this is your fault Nintendo of America, or even tried to argue, saying that it makes no sense or insisting on that not including marine mammals, even though Mr. Nogami himself a few years ago outright stated there's no milk or mammals in this world. I have firmly stood by those words as gospel, and with this new batch of info, it's paid off. If there have been any kind of actual population of mammals all along still living on the earth, not extinct in the wild like cats are, then the entire concept of return of the mammalians doesn't seem to make any sense. If there's a return, that means for sure they're gone. And I don't see why marine mammals would not fall under this. A whale is no less of a mammal than an elephant or something. I think me not wanting more mammals in Splatoon has been rooted in me not wanting the significance of the Judds being the last living mammals taken away by there being some secret population of dolphins or whales for some reason. Also, again, literal mammalian bears. But with this fuzzy ooze looking like this crazy, unnatural thing by someone who wants mammals back for some reason, I think I'm okay with this direction, so as long as the message here is along the lines of, yeah, let's not play God here, this is the mollusk era and the mammals are gone and that's just how it is. The new life on Earth has already adapted to fill these niches and just throwing in mammals will upset the balance of that. Rather than, yeah, whoo, mammals have been brought back from extinction, there's now cats and dogs everywhere, yay! For me, the lack of mammals in the world of Splatoon is part of what gives it its charm because most fictional settings featuring some kind of anthropomorphic animals tend to be focused on mammals, especially ones that are traditionally seen as cute or appealing like cats, dogs, rabbits, etc. So by not having mammals to work from for appeal and being limited to sea creatures, then what we've ended up with in Splatoon are designs based on species that are overlooked or people wouldn't normally think to anthropomorphize, and I love it. And that's even reflected in the world of Splatoon itself, in the sense that these intelligent sea creatures have a different definition of cute from us, like they have pet sea slugs and their cute mascots are things like snails and dead clams and parasitic nematodes. Sorry, this is another insane tangent again. Anyways, I'm feeling hopeful we're going to get something along the lines of mammals not making a full comeback, because again, Fuzzy Ooze already being framed as this thing that seems evil and unnatural. It's not alive, it makes you lose your sense of self when you touch it, it's giving me this huge sanitized ink vibes here, except I guess funnier. Switching subjects, I want to go over the different areas of Alterna that we've seen. I really love this one with the buildings suspended from the sky. It just has this very cyberpunk feel to it. I love it. It looks so busy. I want to know who lives here. I want to know, please tell me. Then this area with the dangling sculptures, literally no idea. Also stumped about this too, honestly. Something wedged between chunks of earth? But this area interests me, as suspended in the sky are diagrams of a cross-section of an eye and a kidney, and these are not squid organs. It's probably supposed to be human organs. Some of the other backgrounds that we see are some torii gates, lanterns, the moai statues. I love the vibes of it. My initial thought was that perhaps humans, in their last efforts to preserve themselves, went and dragged culturally important stuff from the surface into their domes. But that begs the question, how and why is all of this stuff in one place? Alterna. Like, the moai are way out in Polynesia. And there's one small detail that makes me not so sure about these being authentic artifacts. You see the moai statue here? It's either broken or under construction, but either way, the actual Moai statues are carved out of stone, and this is built up with a frame. These cannot be the originals. And of course, what's likely the most important environment here is this wintry one with the rocket. The sky here makes it really easy to tell that this is inside of a dome of some sort. I've brought it up before, but there have been so many things pointing towards a possibility of some kind of space-themed plot in a future Splatoon game, and it seems like now's the time for it to come to fruition. And this shot right here, I am looking at it so hard. Are those fish eggs? Grizzco using power eggs as rocket fuel is a concept I saw floating around even long before this trailer, and it was one that made me go like, okay, but what's the rocket for? And that's the question I'm still asking. And speaking of eggs, are we gonna get an answer on golden eggs finally? It feels like such a weird detail to mention that salmonids find golden eggs so valuable that they won't even trade them, so I would expect something interesting to come about the concept of golden eggs having special properties or something. It could be just that golden eggs are nothing more than a valuable and stronger version of power eggs, and gameplay-wise exist just as a collectible that stands out against power eggs. Some might think that's a little anticlimactic, but it would still make sense. Now I want to talk about some of the freeze frames that we see here. This inkling here looks like he's wearing old-timey Japanese commoner clothing. We know that a further sea level rise was the catalyst for the Great Turf War, and I'm so sure that's what this is showing here. And the revelation that we can get from here is that some tides receded following the Great Turf War. And of course we have the Eiffel Tower in the background, and I'll talk about that in a little while. We also have a few notes on the Judds, questioning Little Judd becoming Judd. In the past, we've gotten some info about Little Judd's inferiority complex and how he's waiting to backstab Judd and take his place, but I never really thought too much into it, and it looks like that might be a plot point now. Not exactly sure how it's gonna play out. I think it'd be really silly if Little Judd is Mr. Grizz himself. Like, there's a lot that must have went into setting up all the salmon run shifts for one thing. There's also the fact we know Lil Judd can't actually talk. He has a tiny cat voice and telepathy, but Mr. Grizz does talk. And the most glaring thing is chaos versus order. Grizz is on team neutral. Lil Judd is an agent of chaos. Like, I have a feeling he's going to tie into the story in a way that's relevant or even helps out the bad guys here. But if he was Mr. Grizz, that's kind of dumb. And I don't know how I'd feel about Judd as a candidate for Mr. Grizz either, despite being on team neutral. Seems a little busy judging turf wars. Also kind of lazy otherwise. If Judd is the bad guy this time, then it'd feel like the professor's work is gone wrong twice, which is kind of funny though. Something else I'm curious about here is how there's all these arrows pointing towards this marking on Judd's face. Was there something injected here? I don't know. There's also this freaky file of a real-life dried-out squid. I'm curious about all these notes outside of it. Maybe this will talk about Inkling's sun drying, because that's something that's only been mentioned outside of the game. And we can see in the notes a squid being put on a grate or something, and the marks on this dried squid look like it was put on a grate or a net as well to dry out. There's a few of these eye-searing freeze frames as well. Like this one I noticed looks like it has a map in the background of some kind. And there's something I've yet to address in this video, and that is the logo that we see associated with this space shuttle. It looks like an A with a loop in it, and then there's a signature, A for Alterna, perhaps? For now I'm just going to guess that Grizzco is a front for this company, but I could be completely wrong, and I do not care. There's too little to go off of for anything. What caught my eye on this frame is that this is the hiragana for nu. Like, that's not a squidified gibberish thing or anything. That is actual Japanese. And speaking of actual letters, this freeze frame here is very interesting because we see more gibberish, but it's also mixed with actual letters. And the font is used in the Splatoon 3 text we see on the end. So I wonder if that's going to be significant. And look, actual Arabic numerals and not squid numbers. And what's very noteworthy is this fingerprint. You know what has fingerprints? Humans. Not many other creatures do. Also, what's with all the Wahoo World graffiti? Well, this only means one thing, guys. Mr. Grizz is fresh fish. There's a few other random things that have caught my interest from outside the trailer. One is here. Where the Inklings come from is called into question. Is this going to imply that Inklings are an unnatural thing, or there was an outside influence on their evolution? Perhaps explaining how all the sea life evolved so ridiculously fast? I've long brushed this idea off because in a 2018 Famitsu interview, the devs were asked whether the Inklings were the result of experimentation, and they said no, they seem to have evolved normally. I wonder if they're gonna go back on that, or lied for the sake of not spoiling, or it means something totally different, or I'm just overthinking this. The other thing I'm so curious about is the masks. Whether it's a new character, or a mechanic, or if it's just symbolic of existing characters, nothing in the trailer really gave us much of a clue about this. Like, there's a sea slug, a fish, and some other kind of fish, I don't know. But more importantly, these look like Null theater masks, and in Null, the usage of color and the kinds of creatures depicted has meaning. I'm not going to dive into that, as there's already an interesting little theory by Michi Cookies, Rich Sketches, and Sam Kalinsky that points out how these masks compare to the sort of symbolism you'd get from real-world Null masks. I'd recommend checking that video out yourself if you're interested. I'll put a link to that in the description. But something I can't get out of my head is how all of these are wooden carvings of these Japanese cultural things. Kind of like a certain radio based on a keyboardy Kuma. Is it all connected? Coincidence? Shit, dude, I don't know. We have also gotten some new information that reopens the question I tried to address in my analysis of the first Splatoon 3 trailer. Where are the Splatlands? I think the key could lie in these towering rocks in Scorch Gorge. Scorch Gorge, say that 10 times fast. Apparently these tall stacks of rocks were undersea hydrothermal vents, but the water has receded in the area to the point where it's now a desert. This is some real confirmation that some serious geological changes have happened on Earth in the past 12,000 years, far more than what I've been imagining. Yeah, we're never going to get a Splatoon world map, are we? By these geological changes to the Earth, I hope they mean just weird tidal changes like what's been previously established, like maybe some new islands here and there, some areas flooded, and not that there's changes to the Earth to the point where the plates have moved around to look like Pangea or some shit, a process that would take hundreds of millions of years. Like, yeah, it's fiction and the devs could be doing what they want, and the process of evolution in Splatoon has already been sped up to an unbelievable degree, but there's a piece in my brain that begs for the bullshit in Splatoon to have some kind of reasonable sci-fi explanation as it takes place on our Earth, and surprisingly we do get those explanations every now and then. So for my next crackpot theory, I'm going to go off the first scenario where there's just some changes to the land masses like flooding and newly exposed lands, but the plates have not moved to an insane degree and we can still use our world map as a point of reference. I also want to go off the idea that the Splatlands are really visible from Octo Canyon, and therefore are not unreasonably far from Inkopolis. Unfortunately, we actually don't have a confirmed location for Inkopolis either, as Inkopolis being in Japan is just speculation, but it's also believable because this is a game made by Japanese developers and they're most likely going to use their home country as a base. Also, there's the Lake Biwa logo that we see throughout Splatoon 2, and a real-life Mount Nantai located in Japan, although the kanji for Nantai is different. And I'm going to use this speculation as a basis for where I think the Splatlands are. But if I'm going off these assumptions, the glaring question is, what about the Eiffel Tower? This scroll looks like it's showing the Eiffel Tower being flipped over from flooding. I thought this was smoke or dust here at first, but it looks like these smoke-like splotches are present in other parts of this image, so I think that's just wear on this piece of paper. It could be that the Eiffel Tower washed up here or was brought here, and let's not forget that there's also pyramids here, and we were shown all of these other human artifacts in Alterna that may or may not be real. Was the Eiffel Tower moved? Is this a replica? It's hard to say now. we also got another piece of information that makes me cast some doubt on the France idea, and that is there are what used to be hydrothermal vents in the Splatlands. Hydrothermal vents form from water entering fissures on the seafloor in volcanically active places such as hotspots and mid-ocean ridges. There really isn't much of any active undersea volcanoes in the vicinity of Paris, like the nearest noteworthy volcanic places are around Italy, Iceland, the Canary Islands, and that's still pretty far. But you know what has lots of volcanic activity and could harbor hydrothermal vents? The Pacific Ring of Fire. And you know what's located right in there? Japan. Now, building off of this, there's a sunken scroll in Splatoon 2 that was there to explain why Captain Cuttlefish and Agent 3 were absent from story mode. They were out exploring the Cape, wherever that is, and there's a map showing where they went. This map feels really vague, but there are two things that stand out to me. One is how this landmass right here seems to resemble Hokkaido. Like, this bit right here is such a distinct Hokkaido shape to me. But what had really made me doubtful about this truly being Hokkaido is the presence of this other landmass to the southeast. But now with the knowledge that there are areas on Earth where water has receded to the point where old hydrothermal vents are now deserts, what if it wasn't the deep sea metro being hinted at here, but rather a different location 3 and Cuttlefish scouted out and are now revisiting? What if Hokkaido, or this new landmass off the coast of it, is where the Splatlands are? And to make this even more insane, you know what traditional craft comes from the Hokkaido region? Something that's very relevant to the story of Splatoon. Wooden carvings of bears. Again, this is just really wild speculation, and it's based on me making a bunch of assumptions, and there are other possibilities because, again, it's not truly confirmed that Inkopolis is where Japan used to be. Also, the Splatoon developers could be doing anything they want, and there might not even be an answer. Still could be France, Hong Kong, Vegas, who knows? That's just me throwing my idea out there. Before I bring this video to a close, there's another question I want to readdress. Who is Mr. Grizz? I don't want to spend too much time on this because I already made a 40-minute video on that, but going off what new info we have here. So as much as I was hoping for Mr. Grizz to be an inkling or some sea creature with a mammal obsession, and for inklings to be held accountable for their actions, unsurprisingly, it looks like Grizzco is going to be yet another external force acting against Inkling society, and the Octarians and the Salmonid, and the Inklings were unwitting pawns in Grizzco's plan, and they aren't going to get any flack for invading Salmonid territory. It's probably going to be space mammals. At least that's what I'm gathering from this. Like it's a return of the Mammalians, and Mammalians. Aliens. It sounds like aliens. There's a few likely candidates here. Off the top of my head are bears or humans. I've talked too much about bears already. So let's talk about humans. In my Grizzco video, while I talked extensively about how the professor should be dead, when it comes to other humans, there's not much I could say against the idea other than how I don't know if I want it, solely because I am so scared of the concept of seeing actual living humans alongside Inklings. If they do take this route, I hope they'd be stylized somewhat in their proportions, rather than looking realistic like the Nilf statue. But if we really are going with a space mammal route, I'd prefer humans over bears. Like with the Arc Polaris ruins, all the English text, the bear signs, the English language countdown, the fingerprint, and there's a detail from the very first game that could possibly come into play here, and I can't stop thinking about it, is this sunken scroll. From the depths of the sea we emerged long ago, seeking the light of the surface. In search of still greater lights, we now send this message into outer space, sealed in a disk. Perhaps one day we will meet others like ourselves. And humans look quite similar to Inklings, don't they? And the kicker, or maybe a coincidence, is that one of the things in the background of the scroll is this salmon egg tag packet thing. The only other scroll with this is the one featuring a human skeleton. If this actually has been foreshadowed this whole time since 2015, I'm gonna go nuts. Okay, tentative plot prediction is that Some humans who escape to space following the rising sea levels find the disk and are like, oh shit, the Earth is habitable again, let's go back. And they just start doing this Jurassic Park operation to try and fix what they've done to the planet, but it's a bad idea at this point. And wait, if they're humans and they're the bad guys, do we like kill them or send them back into space? Like, you know what? I actually don't know. I really don't know. And that's good, actually. I want to be surprised, and I wouldn't mind being wrong about how the plot goes. And I'm actually glad we're given a lot, but so little to work with. Like, there's so much stuff we can only guess how it ties together. Like, why bears, of all things? What's with the masks? And exactly how is this rocket and this mammalian fur goop connected? Are we going into space? And there's even more things from outside this trailer that seem like it could be relevant again. I already brought up the golden record, but what about the squid-shaped moon base that we've seen in the Splatfest in Splatoon 2? Is this all gonna connect back to how the tides change rapidly in Salmon Run, which is something normally tied to the moon? Or the fact that salmonid aggression is tied to changes in the planet's celestial course? I have too many thoughts, too many questions, even more video ideas coming up from this. I need to force myself to stop here because I need to move on with my life, and if I think about this much longer, I'm actually going to go insane. All I know is that Splatoon 3 will be ridiculous, and I am very interested in seeing where this all goes. And something else I love is that Splatoon 3 seems to be giving off this Splatoon 1 vibe that I really missed. I don't know how else to put it, but even though Splatoon 2 is overall the better game, Splatoon just had this energy that was super punkish and weird, and Splatoon 2 felt more poppy, I guess? Like, that energy wasn't quite there, and I really feel like 3 is going to those roots, and I'm so glad. Like, the gameplay genuinely looks fun, and it seems like we might get something more open world and explorable, and I know I'm actually going to have a good time playing it no matter what. I mean, of course I'm worried about the possibility of the story having something as dumb as sentient space bears. You will never hear the end of it from me if that happens. But honestly, as long as it's a solid story that actually makes sense, isn't just stupid, and gives us some satisfying world building, I will be happy. This is Splatoon after all, and I love the series, and I have faith that the developers are going to deliver. Wow, this video is longer than I wanted it to be. Well, thank you to my patrons for your direct support, and thank you guys for sticking through my ramblings. My brain is cursed to think way too deeply about a Squid Game for children, and I have to share my burden with you. Alright guys, stick around because this trailer's just giving me so many ideas to talk about. I'll see you next time.